in order to be extraordinarily successful in your career, you need to take a genuine interest in your work. And if you're fully absorbed in what you're doing, you're likely to excel at it. Whether you're recognized or you're not recognized, whether you achieve the position or the desire, the journey will be a fulfilling.
Welcome, Aakash. Super pumped for today's episode. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ryan. Happy to be here. Happy for you to get me along.
Yes, this is going to be a great conversation. You've had a phenomenal career, and I really want to talk and start out open with that because you've owned a ton of different positions. You've worked in sales roles, delivery roles, customer success roles, and you are now a senior director of Cognizant's AI and analytics practice. Talk to us about this pivot to AI from a lot of these sales roles, delivery roles, now into AI.
Yeah. So the funny thing that my supervisor keeps saying is that Aakash has just completed the circuit. So he's been in different ones. So he has that empathy. And even now, maybe I'm in sales, but I still have empathy for all of those roles. It really helps. I'll come back to that anyway. But from a pivot perspective, I know you asked it from a career, but there's a huge pivot that I want to talk about of moving cities. So being born in a city, then being brought up completely in a different city, working across 7 different cities, traveling to over 40 plus countries for work and leisure. So that's the first pivot probably I want to touch upon, because culturally you change, your outlook changes when you absorb all of the cultures. Yeah. And that's the first pivot I want to talk about. Very important for me. I was born in India in a very small state of Goa. It's a poor man's Ibiza. If somebody wants to just understand an analogy, so it's a poor man's Ibiza. I was brought up in Dubai, where I did majority of my education. Then I traveled back to India, completed my university, moved different cities for work. One thing that I always want to point out is never be in your comfort zone, right? So moving cities ensured that I had that kind of mindset. Easier for me to then put it at work, on my professional and my career, and therefore it was easier for me to pivot my careers, right? So that's probably what I wanted to touch upon. Yeah, and then getting back to career. Yeah, I have very strange career arc. Pagers, remember them? They used to be a thing. Motorola. Yeah, so pagers, cellular phones. Remember Ericsson and Nokia, those big phones. There used to be a Nokia model. We used to call it the brick.
Okay.
You could literally throw it at someone and it'll hit his head and whatever. So pagers, cellular phones, communications, technology, and then pivoting to data mining. That's what they called it earlier. Data mining, data sciences, cloud, machine learning. And now we speak about AI. So that's my possible career arc. And I've completed the circuits you mentioned earlier, right? Key roles across various functions. I'm in sales now, pre-sales, solutioning, business development, delivery, customer lifecycle management. So all of these, business functions. And initially, of course, I was part of these functions. I've also then developed these teams, developed functions. And I also have the other pivot I want to talk about is I also worked on both sides. So I've been working as a client, and now I'm in services. So I understand what it means to be from a client. And probably the fourth I want to talk about is in my career, I've worked with clients from maybe except Antarctica, everybody else. No, seriously, Africa. And I've worked with clients from Africa for 1 or 2 years. Latin America, North America. I'm in Europe now, Middle East, India, of course, the ASEAN region, China.
Interesting.
Been there, done that. So essentially, it's given me a fantastic perspective and empathy, not only of different roles, different cultures, but also of different expectations when you interact people clients. So talking to a German client is completely different from talking to somebody from Japan. Their expectations are completely different. It is not you can't come across as the same Akash. Even though your knowledge is the same, you're the same, between the 6 inches of your ear to ear, it's the same, but completely need to represent yourself differently. So pivots are there not only at career levels, are there across anything and everything we do. If we actually look closely, It's very important to be more like water. Solid, you can be a solid, you can be gaseous, you can be liquid. It's more important to be that kind of element. Very interesting thing about water, but I usually use it as a metaphor.
Yeah, I really, really like that. You got to be like water. You got to flow. You got to be adaptable. I want to talk about your experience, like jumping around, like moving different countries, and like what that really brought to you. Because I think a lot of people, like young in their career, like it's always in their back of their head, like, oh, like I want to go like live in Europe for a year just to experience it, or I want to
Yeah,
go live in like South America or like India or any other place in the world.
yeah,
Can you talk a little bit more about like how that experience has shaped you when you were younger to who you are today?
yeah. So, see, the main thing is when you're in your own society, you're very comfortable because you're just brought up with that. Your language is the same, food habits are the same, eating is the same. You're surrounded by an extended family from a relative's perspective. So you have more people to rely on. It can be a double edged sword, but that's for a different discussion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of comfort factor there. When you grow up in a place like Goa, I mean, the beach is right next door, so it's nothing great. You're probably there playing soccer or any other sport, whatever, or you just finish dinner and you want to go for a walk. You're right there at the most fantastic beach where tourists come, but for you, it's next door. So you have a lot of comfort and you just take things. The minute you move out, your language is different. You do not know, you do not have a support system besides your parents, of course, right? And
Yeah.
if you move out as when you're younger, you do not have a support system. You need to figure out things yourself. Let's say when you're in your hometown, you have your cousins who are also your friends, and then you can gang along and stuff like that. But when you're out, you need to make new friends. Like I said,
Yeah.
I was an introvert earlier, so it's really difficult for me to just think like that. So that taught me that gave me a sense of independence
Yeah.
and helped me structure how I need to do things, right?
Mm.
So let's say, for example, I don't know to do a certain thing. So what's my structure? So the mental model I always have is to understand,
I love
talk
that.
to certain people, gather information, and then research about it, and then form your own opinion, and then and probably do that thing. So that structured mental model is now tattooed into my brain on things. Number one. Number two, I also moved cities across different parts of my life. So at a very young age, at a university level, at a work level, and stuff like that. So that continuous movement has sort of given me, how should I put it? So that kind of feeling where you should never be in your comfort zone, right? So I'm
Ah,
never, yeah. The only rhythm I have in life is having a schedule for a day, right?
yeah.
I need to get up in the morning. I need to exercise. I need to do X, Y, Z. I need to work. I need to then sleep on time. That's the only rhythm I have. But rest,
Yeah.
everything for me is out of the comfort zone. I'm okay for anything, which is why I told you about certain pivots. Uh, the
Interesting.
foundation of moving cities is the foundation why I could then have a career arc, is the foundation for the mental models that I have
Interesting.
ingrained. Yeah, and I can talk more about them as in this conversation. But yeah, that's what I would call out as my biggest strengths that I've had because of moving cities. And then there are a lot of things is that you have different cultures. You just don't
Yeah.
think that the culture you're born with is the best. You can take the best from a lot of different cultures. See, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, everything is right, everything is wrong. It just depends on your vantage point. Correct?
Correct.
So it's like that. So unless you know the context, you never know what is right or wrong. It's the same thing about cultures. I can sit in one part and then say, hey, they do these things differently. But when you reach there, you understand context as to why they
Yep. Yep.
do it.
Yep.
Just as an example, maybe they don't have water, which is why they cook things differently, right? Which
Mm.
is why they like different kind of cuisines. So there's a big context to that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm curious, how has, so you built the foundation of like the mental models and like being outside your comfort zone, which is awesome. But like, how has that like transitioned into like the business world from like a leadership perspective or just like your day to day role? Like all these different cultures are coming together. You've learned a whole lot. Do you have any like specific examples of like how that shaped you in your like professional career?
Yeah. So here's the story, right? So in the I'll answer in a story format, right?
Yeah.
That will also give you a good view how this shaped. So in the 90s, finishing school, I wanted to become a scientist or an astrophysicist. I clearly remember. You know, the kinds that conduct research, invent,
Yep.
discover, not too much about curing diseases, not too much, more on the other things, right?
Yep.
My school projects, I recall very clearly. The one school project that I got rave reviews for, but it was the same theme. It was, are we alone in the universe? So I used to always do this scientific things, stuff like that. And yeah, so my intellect had different plans for me. So I had this aims, wishes, or whatever it is you can call at that point of time. At that young age, I don't want to label them as ambitions. Yeah, so let's just say they were wishes or aspirations or whatever. So my intellect had different plans for me. I didn't qualify for engineering, medicine. So I did the next best thing. I did a degree in physics.
Mm.
I pursued physics. I completed the degree, and then I started and then I started a job as sales. Nothing to do with physics. Yeah. Okay. But subliminal messaging. So the backstory is subliminal messaging. Keep that in mind. So let's park that for a minute. It'll come back. So I started my career as sales. I mentioned before, right? Pagers, cellular phones, things like that, communications, technology. So I grew professionally. Again, the mindset of not being in the comfort zone. So I grew professionally. I'm moving to a different city. I want to prove myself. That kind of
Yeah.
thing. I grew professionally. I got promoted. I'm moving cities, taking bigger roles, taking up exciting challenges. And even though I was not a scientist, I reminded myself that I should never be in a comfort zone. I didn't
Mm.
use that as an excuse to beat me up. I used that as springboard to improve myself. Come the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Newspapers are full of reports about the software boom, right? The internet, Tim Berners-Lee, internet, computers, right? Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were the
Yeah.
Elon Musks of today, and so on and so
Yep.
forth, right? Yeah. So then everybody is talking about these Wall Street quants, because in finance is where the first data mining and analytics, everything was taking place, right? Even
Yep.
at that point of time. They started from the 1995s, 98s, things like that, especially the investment bankers. So we
Yep.
had all of these things about computers, software, Wall Street quants, and suddenly certain cities are booming because of
Yeah.
this, right? And then what happened was Microsoft came, DOS became obsolete, Windows was launched, and then technology was peaking. I kept up to date about all of these things, and this is where subliminal messaging I was saying, right? So my subconscious played a part, and then in 2010, after 10 years of almost working in sales, in telecom, banking, whatever it is,
Yep.
a mentor called me. He said, "Hey Akash, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm having a cheesecake." Why? So, so he said, "Okay, listen, I'm in IBM. I know we've not been in touch, but there is this thing called data science. I want you
Mm.
to join." I said, "What?" And the friends around the coffee shop are looking at me. What happened? So I got up, I walked ahead, and then I had a conversation with him. Essentially, he wanted me. So he knew me, right?
Yeah.
He'd worked with me before. He knew that I love to learn. He knew my passion.
That's
He knew
awesome.
that I was a guy whose attitude was get things done, right? And that's the potential that he saw in me. And I was happy in my role at that point of time. I
Yeah.
had just, in fact, 3 months ago, or maybe, yeah, 3 or 4 months ago, I had moved to a different city, taken up a larger role in my organization, and I was leading as the regional head of sales for enterprise products and stuff like
That's
that.
sweet.
So yeah, so I was doing well. I had just moved, everything was going fine, and I love my job. But I knew somewhere that I was in my comfort zone because I used to
Mm.
keep doing my target. My team was fantastic. I had a fantastic relationship with everything. I could just go to sleep for a week and everything would be still fine. All my budgets would be met. So that's when I thought, let's give it a thought. Okay, so let's give it a thought. I did some research. In fact, I did a lot of research. That's quite an understatement that I'm saying. I did a lot of research. I spoke to a lot of people. I chatted with a lot of folks on different forums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought data science, scientist. So all of that subliminal messaging, research, whatever
It's
it is,
amazing.
all just came crashing down in my mind. I said, I'm taking this,
That's so
right?
cool. Yeah.
I had to start from scratch. No problem. I did it. I
That's so
I
cool.
don't think it's a challenge. And I remember a book came out. Forbes. I don't know if it's no Harvard Business Review article came out. DJ Patil, who was Barack Obama's chief AI scientist,
Respect.
yeah, and Thomas Davenport. You must have heard of him from
Yeah.
analytics, right?
Yeah.
Both of
Yeah.
them wrote an article in 2012, Harvard Business Review, Data Science, the sexiest job of the 21st century. That was my tipping point.
Interesting.
I said, I want to do this. I said, I want to do this. I joined and started from scratch. But I'll tell you what, it's not actually that you start from scratch. You start from scratch because you really don't know that
Yeah.
ecosystem. You do not
Interesting.
know the knowledge. And I chose my niche in that. See, one is you could be a totally bland niche where you could be a project manager in AI, right? Just a project
Yeah.
manager. Doesn't know anything, just manages project. I can take that back. I doesn't know anything. All my project manager friends might say, feel something bad. Just a joke. I can be a data scientist, right? So my niche was I am fantastic at understanding people. I am fantastic at understanding clients,
Yeah.
right? I've been a client myself. Again, because of my different cultures, exposure, moving cities, understanding what people mean when they speak certain things, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Which countries mean a no when they say no, or a no when they say yes, right?
Yep.
So how does it work? So all of that came into when I said, you know what, I want to be an SME, right,
Mm.
in the data science world. So
Yeah.
that's where I started as being an SME. I started off as a telecoms SME. And then as I grew, I could manage the data scientists better. I could manage projects better. I could
That's cool.
manage revenue better. And then I started evangelizing, right? Both internal, external. IBM is a fantastic organization to
Oh
work with
yeah.
in that way. At the very tip of the spear in terms of research on AI, quantum computers, things like that, right? They
Yep.
have divisions of research engineers who give at least file for at least 40, 50 patents a month. So
That's
that's their
insane.
run rate, right? They counted certain, the research divisions just counted on the number of patents that they bring in. So being in that kind of ecosystem where I was a big fish in a nice little pond, and
Yeah.
now I'm the smallest fish in a very big pond.
Bond.
Oh man. I mean, first of all, I have a fantastic support system.
Yeah.
My mother and my wife. They
Yeah.
have never ever discouraged me. Even though they have no idea as to what I do or what I'm going to do, they say, you know what, do it. You will figure it out.
I love that.
So I think changing careers is not something you should take lightly,
Yeah.
but it can lead to more fulfilling and satisfying professional life in the
Mm.
long run.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
take a 3-year view, a 5-year view, it's not going to work. But if you take a 30-year view and say 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, how do I want to retire?
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know who said it, but someone important and famous, of course, said you generally need to change career 3 times, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first time that I want to change. I changed my career. Pros and cons are there. Do your research. What? Take the leap of faith.
I love that. And get outside your comfort zone. That's what I'm really taking it back from this. But I do
Yeah.
want to talk about like switching jobs and the benefits of like sticking with your job if you want to do it or if you don't want to do it. Can you talk a little bit more about like the pros and cons? Because Gen Zers right now,
Yeah.
I found some stat. Job hopping is common amongst, this is like a Forbes article, quote, job hopping is common amongst any generation or Gen Zers generation. Gen Zers are switching jobs at a rate of 134% higher than before the pandemic in 2019. So can you tell us a little bit more of like why Gen Zers may should stick with their jobs or if they shouldn't? And what should
Yeah.
they consider?
Yeah. So I think if so you have the Gen Zs, you have like people from my generation, and then you have people from my older generation. The
Hmm.
older generation, the way we saw it, they used to be in companies for 20 years,
Yeah.
25 years, 30 years. And majority of them started and ended with one company, right? You would join a
Yep.
Ford and you would retire at a Ford, as an
Yep.
example, right? So, yeah. See, I think my personal opinion, right? I have jumped quickly and I have stayed in an organization. I've done
Yeah.
both. Okay. So I'm not coming from any high ground to say one is better than the other.
Interesting.
But there is always a context of when to do what,
Mm.
right? To your specific question on Gen Z and the very important number on the 134% that you mentioned. See, Barack Obama's words is I clearly remembering him saying, right? there are a lot of people who know what they want to be,
Yeah.
but they don't know what they want to do. There's a
Mm.
big difference. Okay. Let me give an example, right? So let's say I want to be a chief data scientist by 35. Some Gen Z, okay?
Yeah.
That Gen Z is 22, 25. He says, I want to be a chief data scientist by 35. He says, I want to make X amount of money by X amount of age. Now look at the most successful people, and what do they say? They say, you know what? I'm really interested in computers. I want to figure this stuff out. And they end up being Steve Jobs
Mm.
because they're passionate about what they want to do, not what they want to be. Right? They say, I'm really interested in solving problems about machine vision. Then you will end up like a chief data scientist because you're really
Interesting.
passionate about something. You want to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
This is the context that I want to start. That first of all, in order to be extraordinarily successful in your career, you need to take a genuine interest in your work. And if you're
Mm.
fully absorbed in what you're doing, you're likely to excel at it. Whether you're recognized or you're not recognized, whether you achieve the position or the desire, the journey will be a fulfilling one.
Mm.
Now, take that in context with your job. If you're passionate about it, if you do have some kind of tenure, remember you're establishing credibility. They will look at you and say, you know what, that's the guy who gets things done. He's
Yeah.
passionate about what he does. So you establish your credibility, your expertise pays off, you have an organizational influence, and then you will have a natural advancement. And you will eventually become what you want to be.
Yep. I think that is like so cool. And following your passion is like, I think you, when you're doing something that you really like. And I think a lot more people, this is a personal take here. I think just like more people, if you are passionate about something that you find in your job, you should consider like freelancing on that and being like, oh, I actually really enjoy this. And maybe someday like I can do this as a full-time gig. And yeah, I think that's something that Gen Zers should consider like a whole lot more.
Yeah. There's a lot of peer pressure also among Gen Zs, right?
Yeah, oh, for
My
sure.
friend X is earning whatever 300K or whatever. I am at 275. Even that 25 makes a difference. But essentially, both of them are living the same lifestyle. What is it that a person with 300K can do more than somebody with 275K or even 250K, right? As an example,
Exactly.
I'm giving you here. So
Yeah. Does that change like throughout your life? Or is that like all, because that's definitely true. Like people my age, it's like, oh, like I'm going to compare myself to this person or this person. But like, does that change as you get older?
it does. It does. It does. You, I think it does. It has for me. It has for a lot of my friends. Number one, I can tell you out of my own experience. Number one, I used to have this whole big thing that big manager. I need to be a big manager. I need to have big team. Now I really don't care anymore. I think my strength is in here. I'm very happy in a matrix environment. My organization is huge.
Yeah.
What Cognizant has 360,000 employees all over. That's huge. That's
That's
really
pretty.
something. I have a highly matrix structure. 60% of the people I talk to in a day do not report to me, but we get things done.
Yeah.
Cognizant has double digit growth. I'm whatever. I'm going to do well this year. I've been doing well for other years. So I think that that kind of context changes. Once you start moving, once you start taking things internal, going back to my point, right? What you want to do rather than what you want to be. When you pull things internal, then you have more accountability, more understanding, and then more confidence in yourself. And that passive confidence, is really the ultimate. And then your context changes. Then
Yeah.
it's not a race, it's not a rat race anymore. It is about, am I improving 1% every day? Hey,
Hmm.
how much did I learn? Okay, say if you had a fantastic client meeting, but you still go back and introspect, what could I have done better? Now when you are in that mode, then your sense of elations are completely different. It is
Interesting.
not that number that drops into your account. It is not the role or the designation that you're this thing with. It's not.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what do we want? We just, as humans, we want respect. Somebody wants to earn more to get more respect. Somebody wants to do X thing to get more respect. So we want respect, but do you respect yourself? How
Mm-hmm.
much do you invest in yourself? How much do you feel you need to get better? Um, so once you move the entitlement out, move internally, as you grow up, I think it happens naturally, at least for most of the people, and at least
Yeah.
for the people that I know. I can give examples of outliers as well, but that's always the case, right? There are always outliers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so much pressure to like do well, but you make a really good point. Like once you like internalize like what you want to do and like are you happy with what you're doing or like do you enjoy what you're doing? I think that's like the ultimate alignment. I think for me that's one of my biggest fears is like getting into like a role or like doing something that I don't like to do because I get purpose out of my work. I loved like podcast conversation like this is awesome. Like I love doing this, and it's just the biggest fear in the world is to do something where I wake up I'm like oh my god I do not want to do this.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about a really interesting concept that you brought up beforehand of like breaking down every tough situation in 5 variables. So we're all going to come across like tough situations in our personal lives, professional
Yeah.
lives. Can you talk about those 5 variables about how you break down a tough situation?
Yeah. So I have this habit of mental models.
Mm,
Um, so say if I want to learn, I go back to the fundamental mental model of understanding foundation, learning it from scratch, and then building up that knowledge rather than superficially reading and all that. So my habit has always been mental models. I talked about a mental model earlier also. So
that's sweet.
for that, one of my early careers are very painful, right? 98% of the time you feel like you're an idiot. I'm talking
Yeah,
about myself, but I think
me as
this can
well.
be labeled on all of us, right? Yeah. You're either lost, you're either confused, or you're insecure, right? And then you have some star performers who are like Lionel Messi of the soccer
Yeah,
world, they just know everything. They just know
yeah,
what to do when and stuff like that. And you're like, I have taken care and prepped myself for 3, 4 days, and I
yeah.
came out with nothing. How? Okay, so again, my previous thoughts: internalize, introspect, carry a voyage of self-discovery. And
Mm,
when I did that with a lot of things, I noticed that in every tough situation I faced professionally, I could literally break it down into 5 things. What are the misalignments from an incentives perspective?
mm,
What are the misalignments from a personalities perspective? What are the misalignments from a perspectives perspective? What is the misalignment from a constraints perspective? What is the misalignment from a resources perspective? Any situation has either 2 or 3 of these misaligned. And that is where the problem lies.
interesting.
So we have, let's say, a team, and then you have 2 personalities that don't work in that team. Let's say it's a 5 member team, right?
Yeah.
Could be anything, but let's say 5 member, 2 people, their personalities are not working. All right. Let's say there are 2 big leaders within one organization. The CEO tells leader A and leader B, hey, you guys need to work together. It's not happening. Now, are they incentivized to work together? Or they're
Mm,
not? Or they're incentivized to build bigger portfolios, which is why they're competing against each other. So that's an
interesting.
incentive problem, right? Perspectives is really simple. You and me could be looking at the same thing, like 2 sides of the coin, heads and tails. Your perspective is right, my perspective is right, but I have never tried to come to your side and see, hey, there is something different on the other side of the coin. So that's the perspectives things. Constraints is, I don't know, somebody could have a problem at home. His mother could have had cancer, whatever. He has some constraints for which they cannot work properly or something like that. Resources is very simple,
Yeah.
right? Does he have the right tools, the knowledge, he or she, whatever it is, right? So, resource. So if you look at this incentives, personalities, perspectives, constraints, and resources, it all boils down to 5 things. Maybe there's a sixth one. I haven't found it out.
Yeah.
If I do, maybe I can write a book on it or something like that. But yeah, I have just
Oh,
seen
I
that
like that.
misaligned variables made these situations more difficult to navigate. I try and put my finger on this. And then when I put a finger on this, it's easier to say that, okay, this is the problem. This is what we need to solve it.
Yeah. Which of those 5 in your experience has been like the hardest to get aligned? Like once you identify it, how do you align it?
Yeah, it's generally personalities, isn't it? See,
That's what I thought it was going to be, but I still wanted to ask.
I mean, come on, even if somebody doesn't have an incentive, there are
Yeah.
people who would anyway support, right? Because
Yep.
you're good to them. But if the personalities don't match, oh my God. Sometimes you just solve it temporarily and then it
Yeah.
comes back as a bigger problem or it comes back as passive aggressive, whatever it is. But if personalities are a problem, then it's not going to work out. It's the same
Interesting.
thing. I mean, look at it from a relationship perspective, right? You're going dating. People say, oh, she's so much like you.
Yeah.
But do the people who are like us really gel well? Are all the couples that way? No. I mean, it doesn't work
Yeah.
that way, right? So, yeah, it's all a personality thing. You could both software, you could both like video games, you could both like horse riding. Just randomly, I'm taking stuff. But, if there's a personality aspect of it. So I think personalities is way difficult to humans are the most
Yeah.
difficult to manage.
That is facts, and that from dealing with a lot of clients across a lot of different cultures. Humans are
Yeah.
very complex. Like we might, that's what I think is so crazy is like we're two humans right now, but we might not even agree what like our favorite color is, or like we
Yes.
might not like my favorite color is blue. I don't know what yours is. What's your
It
favorite
is
color?
blue.
Okay, blue. But another example, like someone's favorite color is like green. It's like, oh, well, we don't even agree on that. Like humans are complex human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And humans also don't like to be wrong, right? And then,
Mhm.
it branches out into different emotions and stuff like that. So yeah, the complexity of personalities is most difficult to manage.
Interesting. Is
Yeah.
there one of those to align those personalities? What comes to mind is like figuring out like the incentives to get
Yeah.
people to like figure it out, these personalities. But like, is there a different one or what one corrects them the most?
So again, the answer to that is on what kind of personality that you're dealing with.
Mm, that's fair.
Right? Certain personalities need incentives. So it's what you're driven with, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if certain personalities are just passive aggressive because they don't have the perspective in place, you give them the perspective and they say, "Oh, okay, my
Mm,
bad. I didn't think of it that way." Things like that. Sometimes what happens is one person has less resources. He knows about it. He doesn't want to admit it, and therefore he's having a clash of personalities with somebody else or something like that.
yep.
So you quietly understand through a back channel that hey, give him the right resources, he will think he's on an even keel, and then he or she then will be not clashing from a personality perspective. So I think different therefore understanding of human psychology is
Yeah.
a as a leader, I mean, that's basic. It doesn't matter what your knowledge is, because once you grow professionally up the ladder, which is why CEOs, right? I mean, a
Yeah.
CEO doesn't need to be a chief data scientist at all, or the best chief data scientist will not be the best CEO at an AI company, right?
Yep.
Things like that. So, yeah, at a certain level, everything gets stripped off, and it com- just come. You just need to understand how to manage people. I
Interesting.
mean, certain CEOs need to manage Congress. Certain CEOs, need to manage. It is true, right? Certain
Yeah,
CEOs need to manage diversity and personalities over there. They need to. One curious thing, right? How do you manage high performing teams? That itself is one of the biggest skills.
for sure.
It's actually easier pushing a team from, let's say, level 1 to level 3, but pushing a team from 4.5 to 5 is a bigger challenge. And then
Interesting.
keeping them there, which is why the best coaches are the highest paid, right? Uh,
Interesting.
so, yeah, so I think depends on the personality you need to manage.
Interesting. And last question for you. This has been an awesome episode talking about a whole wide range of topics, but I'm just curious, like young 20s, we kind of distilled it from this conversation, but like what advice would you have for someone early in their career to have a successful career?
Yeah. Really, two pieces of advice. Advice number one is simply learn on how to accomplish tasks.
Mm,
Just get stuff done. I'll give you an example. At every level and at every organization, in every group of friends or wherever, there is always those guys who excel at describing problems.
mm,
They are sophisticated, in explaining why something went wrong and why
yep.
it can't be fixed. My advice is, how about the people who say, I'll get it done, let me take care of it.
Mm,
So if you project an attitude of whatever is needed, I can handle it or I can do it,
Yep.
Whoever is running the organization will notice. You might think that it's a curse to be good at your job. No, it's not. People are going to notice,
Yeah.
and then they will say that this is the guy. You assign him something, he'll just kill it. He
Hmm.
will nail it. So
Yep.
don't be impatient. Don't look out for those plum assignments. Be the guy who gets stuff done.
It's amazing.
That's my advice number one. Advice number two, I'm just going to reflect back on worrying about what you want to do rather than what you want to be. Sorry,
Mm,
who you want to be. I just want to reiterate that, right?
that's
Be
amazing.
fully absorbed and obsessed about what you want to do, and you will achieve your position, desire, journey, everything what you want. Nothing is linear in life.
Hmm.
It's exponential. And just as Warren Buffett, right? He
Yep.
made 80% of his wealth in the last 15 years of his life. Everything will come crashing down. It'll all be in your hands. So I would just talk about these two advices for folks. It's
Awesome.
99% of our problems are in our head. And the attitude is what sets you apart.
That's amazing. Well, Akash, thank you so much for joining us today. This was an awesome episode. Talked about a lot. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Hey, I really love this, Ryan. What you're doing is fantastic. Keep going. More power to you.
Awesome. Appreciate you.